So today I'm joined by Wesley Cogdal. He's a Huntsville native who runs Stiff Neck Studios. It's a professional, high quality miniature painting service. They do everything from Forge World Titans to entire Warhammer armies. Stiff Neck Studios takes the pain out of painting. Wesley, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So, in addition to running Stiff Neck Studios, Wes has a hobby Twitch stream that he runs where you can join him painting with colleagues and competing against others in trivia every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central. The dude also looks like a real life blood angel. Tell me about your journey and what led you to starting a painting studio and streaming hobby content.
So I guess the elevator pitch, I guess, because that's a question that gets asked a lot. Is like, usually not Warhammer players asking. It's usually friends, family. They're like, "What is all this stuff in your basement? What do you got all these artists? What's going on?" So it all started with Dungeons and Dragons, a little over 20 years ago. I was a collector of the lead miniatures at the time, before they realized that lead was bad, and I liked painting those. And then this new game came out. It was called Warhammer, and it came with like plastic box sets of like 10 models. And to be truthful, I always liked the models more than the actual role playing. So I found myself gravitating from Dungeons and Dragons more to the Warhammer tabletop board game. Then I had a large collection of Dungeons and Dragon models. Was going through a divorce because the now ex-wife wanted me to get rid of the models, so I put them on eBay, and then wham bam, I discovered a miniature market where there was an actual desire to have miniatures painted customly for customers. And that's kind of the origin story of the studio. And then little by little, year by year, as I'm an active duty officer, I grow the studio a little bit more. So now we're located far away as Russia or Canada, France, UK, a couple in Poland, and then all over the US. So we've got a nice little network of artists, a large talent pool to pull from.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like your studio is successful. You said you had about 18 different people working for you, so that's awesome. And I watched your stream last night and a few of your VODs. So the stream really interactive and fun. It was a mixture of kind of hanging out with friends, but also painting. And one of the VODs, it was actually about you kind of like walking through the process of painting lenses. So it felt like it was not just interactive, but also like a fun way to learn new painting techniques. So I highly recommend everyone checks out his stream. So we're going to go into running a painting commission studio first, real quick. So can you describe to me what it's like to run a painting studio and what a day in the life is like?
Let's see. I guess the best way to describe it is it's like herding cats. So artists, by their nature, are very intrinsic. A lot of them aren't necessarily motivated by money, but more motivated by the desire to paint cool models and just be part of a team. And a lot of artists aren't necessarily business minded or care for deadlines or restrictions to their painting style. So it's a lot of like, come on, everybody, let's go. We're trying to move in the right direction, get this project done, keep the client happy. So you're trying to do that on, like I said, 18 artists across God knows how many time zones from between here and Russia. And then you're constantly answering emails for quote requests, Facebook messages from random people asking about how do I get a quote, uh, Discord messages, Instagram messages, Twitch. So it's a lot, but it it's about managing chaos and figuring out what you can drop and what you can't at the time,
Hmm.
as all professions are.
So let's say one of those customers reaches out to you via, Instagram or Facebook page, and kind of what is the process and how do you talk to a customer to kind of get their idea into fruition?
So typically, the way process works is that the studio doesn't advertise at all. It's all word of mouth and what they see if they're seeing us on Facebook or Instagram. I don't really consider that something I'm paying to advertise on. It's just we post it there and it's there if you like it. But a lot of times somebody will see something we painted and they'll shoot us an email or they'll message us on Facebook and ask, and I'll direct them to our stiffneckstudio at gmail.com email and say, hey, just tell me in the email how what quantities of models you're wanting painted. 10 intercessors, one apothecary, one librarian, what the equipment on them is, what the color scheme is, what your idea for basing is, if they have any example pictures to attach them. so we have an idea of the kind of what they're looking for, and then let us know, like, are they providing the models? Are they assembled already? Are we purchasing the models for them? Because we give a 20% discount off GW retail to help our clients out. So, and then that starts the back and forth. Um, hey, do you want magnets on these things? Do you want conversions? Because the GW fine cast models are crap. Maybe we can make you something cooler with plastic, or maybe we can 3D print. Magos Mike over here is pretty wicked good with 3D printing and getting files, and the studio offers 3D printing services now. So all that gets rolled up into conversation back and forth on emails, and every customer is treated. There is no like blanket email. It is one-on-one with me every single time. And we do cradle to grave. So when the process starts with me, it ends with me, delivering them the final product of photos to approve and make sure that they like the work we did, and then we ship it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even know you guys did the conversions and magnets and 3D printing. So that's another good thing that you're not just a painting, commission studio. You do, kind of
We do it
all
all.
aspects of the hobby.
Yeah, cradle to grave is my favorite term for us. We can do just about everything except for really intricate sculpting.
Okay, so one of the things I'd like to get into is kind of the actual kind of painting the army, but also the process of getting it from box to fully painted model. So I imagine as a commission studio, you have a very refined method of walking through painting a full army. So let's say someone came to you, gave you specifications, 2,000 point army, and you get the GW boxes. What do you go from there?
If we've already settled, the biggest thing is kind of settling on the color scheme. Like, do they want it to look like the box art that GW is doing, or do they have something that they saw on Cool Mini or not, or something that they saw on Facebook or Instagram that we've done before, but they just want to swap the colors out? Once we have that settled and we have their list built out on exactly how they want the armies or the models assembled, and then what equipment they want on them, the box comes into the studio, or we order it from our distributor once it gets in here. Um, Depending on whether that project is staying in-house, which is here with my guys, or if it's going out of house, which means it's going to one of our remote artists. Once the remote artist receives the package, they have all the instructions and everything they need. They've got their marching orders, so to speak. They begin the process. They provide me photos every Sunday to review and make sure that they're staying on target, and their vision is what I'm thinking too. If it's in-house, then either Kaylin or Mike will be doing some assembly on it, and then we'll begin paint.
Yeah, so one of the questions I have too is, I know you have to clean mold lines off and glue these guys and then do primer and base paints. So
Yep.
is that like, you know, is there kind of a process? Do you do like everything glued together then? Everything clean the line molds off or anything specific?
No, I mean that's a very good question, and that is a danger that a lot of new hobbyists get into. That whenever you get these new Games Workshop kits, you're super excited because you want to see the final product. So you get it, you cut it all together, you super glue it together, and you're like, oh, this model is awesome. And then you go to start tackling the painting, and you're like, crap, I can't even get to half of the details because the arms are across the body. Uh, so that is something that we're very strategic about, I would say, compared to what maybe other studios do, or what just your average war gamer. Whenever we get a kit, we really think about like what all can be left off and be painted separately before we glue it on to the actual whole model itself. So let's take I've got these dark Eldar Raiders right here. This is a very complex tank compared to most. If we compare this to, say, a Rhino, Rhino is really just a pillbox. It's a square, flat thing. There's no interior to paint. When you close up all the hatches, there's no crew hanging out of it unless you want them to be hanging out of that. So it's very simple. It's super airbrushable. There's not a lot of chains and stuff hanging off of it. But these Dark Eldar Raiders, you not only have to paint the bottom because it's exposed, you have to paint the top and the interior because it's exposed, and then you have all these different little accent pieces that are hanging off of it, chains and skulls and spikes, and then you also have to have the crew that are exposed that stand on the Raider. So if you were to take this thing and you glue it 100% together, and you glued the crew in there and you glued the flag in there and everything else, you had just created yourself a complete nightmare to paint all those details properly, and not to mention how slow you would have to go. So the artists in the studio are very astute to this. So, for instance, on this Raider, uh, the only thing that was really painted as one solid piece on this that I'm holding was the hull itself. The spike piece was left off. All these blades were left off. The centerpiece was left off. All the skulls and the spikes were all left off. That allows us to airbrush different things, different colors, and then when you glue the pieces on, that breaks up the solid color. Versus if you spray painted this thing all purple, then you're having to go in there and literally paint every little detail by hand because you can't airbrush a lot of this stuff. It's so tiny and intricate. So yeah, you have to be strategic if you're trying to do mass production and speed painting.
Right, and then so I definitely like that idea of the kind of like the sub assemblies to
Yep.
allow you to get those finer details. But it also looks like you've got maybe 7 of these raiders on your desk from what I can see. So you are doing
Yeah.
about 7 of them. So everything that looks the same, you
Yep.
kind of do that in an assembly line.
Yep. I just got done doing like tribal tattoos on all the holes, using some stencils from Fallout Hobby. Give them a little plug. So, I just pull these stencils off. And again, anything that you can do to make your project faster. Uh, these add a lot of detail and they take no time because you literally just slap the stencil on, hit it with airbrush, and then rinse and repeat that on 7 vehicles. So we pride ourselves on being very fast, and really that's being very fast but not trading quality because we only paint to one high quality across our whole range of models.
Yeah, and that's another kind of like compliment I have for you guys because there's plenty of commission studios, and I won't name them, but I've looked at a few of them, and sometimes they paint to like a tabletop ready, like someone wants to get a tournament, and they want to get
Yep.
all just 3 colors to go to a tournament, and that's fine and all, but like every model that I saw at Stiff Neck Studios was vastly better than what I'm currently painting at. So yeah, the quality was everything
Yeah.
looked like it was like a character piece. So that was definitely awesome.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always been very strict about in the studio, and it makes it hard for artists to actually make the cut to get into the team. Because when we ask for new artists, we get overwhelmed with a lot of people wanting to get in, but not everybody paints at the same skill level. And I have to keep in mind that we don't paint at lower levels. We paint at one high level, and that's what we want to be known for, and that's kind of what separates us from a lot of the other studios that have the tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 silver,
Hmm.
platinum, golden demon. Uh, I don't play that game in the studio. If you can't afford what we're putting out as a product, then you need to go find another studio that can do the lower quality work. Not to mention, like Mike, myself, the rest of the artists, we don't like painting lower
Right.
capable, or we don't like painting less than we're capable of. It's not as enjoyable for us. It's boring. It's tedious. When we get to paint to our best ability, we get to be a lot more creative and really get after it.
Yeah, and so a couple things you mentioned there too is the speed at which you paint because I've heard one of the issues of trying to get into commission painting is sure some people can be good enough at painting, let's say, but if they can't keep up with a reasonable speed, then they're going to be working for like pennies on the dollar, right? So
Yeah,
what are those tricks to paint massive amounts of models at a quick speed but keep that quality?
really, number one is expectation management with the client. And that's all me, 100%. Like none of the artists talk to the clients. It's just me. And that's, 20 years of experience, every single army. I've worked on just about anything. When a client sends me an email and says, "Hey, this is what I'm looking to get done," I immediately start looking at the color scheme and okay, where are there going to be issues and what the client's wanting? Like, okay, he's wanting white chest against a black background, whatever it is. And I start working with the client going, okay, hey, look, we only paint to one high level. Here are some areas that we can maybe massage the quote a little bit and speed up things for you if you want to get it done by LVO. You know, it's that kind of secondhand knowledge that I have that allows us to kind of get a little bit of an edge on commissions. And then after that, it's the artists. Start with sub assemblies, then you go to rattle can, then you go to airbrush, then you go to washes, then you go to dry brushing, then you go to hard edge highlighting, and just knowing that process before you ever even start cutting and gluing models together.
Mm.
You have to think about that stuff. And that's really where we get a lot of our efficiencies from, because we're not going back and redoing things.
Yeah, I definitely think that's
For
one
years.
huge thing that I certainly don't do myself. When I get some, let's say, new model, like I get a nice like Magnus to Red, a nice big display model, and all of a sudden I'm
Yep.
like, okay, time to go learn how to paint pink flesh for the first time, and it's very much a learning experience going through. But you guys plan that all out, and you've done these things before, so it's not the first time
Yeah.
you've done some technique when you go through a model.
Yep. Another thing that really saves us a lot of time, and I think is an invaluable asset, is we have an entire team of talented artists that we can use. I mean, it's an invaluable resource that at 2 o'clock in the morning, if I know I'm getting ready to do Dark Elder Skin and I can't think of a recipe I want or whatever, I can just go into our Discord and I can go into our private channel with just our artists, and I can go, hey guys, I'm struggling with this Dark Elder Skin. We need it to be a fast recipe. Uh, can you throw something at me? And then let's say my guy Alexi that's in Belarus is like, yo Wes, this is what I did on the last commission, dude. Super fly easy, but instead of using GW paint, you're going to use Pro Acryl, Elf Flesh, and then you're going to wash it with sepia, and you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like that could have taken 2 days of researching on Google to try to find the right recipe, and I got it in 30 seconds from another artist, and he gets to walk me step by step right then on how to do it if I run into any problems.
Yeah, and I had talked to Tarzan. He said he worked with you and
Yeah.
sometimes does some freelance stuff with you as well.
Yep.
And he was telling me that that was one benefit he felt like he had, is that he had great painters that he could come to and ask some questions like, "Hey, how do you do this? Can you give me critiques on my works?" So
Yeah.
that's also great that as a commission painting studio with multiple people, not just one, you get that feedback and those lessons
Yeah.
learned.
But it can be savage too. Like there's a double-edged blade, because if you put shit in our whips channel, prepare to be getting ripped apart. Because while they will help you, they will also beat you down. And that's just part of getting better as an artist. If everybody tells you everything that you touch is gold, you're never gonna get any better. So I encourage the artists to eat each other.
Yeah, I let Tarzan critique some of my work. I didn't even bother with you and giving it to you because yeah, it's so much behind the kind of the quality you guys are painting.
Well, you're just starting off, man. I mean, these guys have been painting for like years upon years upon years, and
Hmm.
I don't think it's not a healthy habit in the hobby to compare your work to other people's, because you don't know what their situation is. Like you don't know, hey, this guy paints models professionally. Like he doesn't have a day job. He literally wakes up at 9 o'clock in the morning and he paints until 6 o'clock in the evening. And he's been doing that for 15 years.
Right.
Versus somebody that's like you, that's serving the country or in the Air Force, you got PT, you got a wife, I like you get to paint like an hour a night maybe before she starts getting cranky with you. So you can't you can't compare yourself to other people that you don't know their situation.
Hmm.
And then there's just some people are just blessed and they're just amazing. They touch a paintbrush for the first time and they just go with it, and they're like a Picasso. We're not all that way. I'm not that way. I'm not a golden demon painter.
Yeah, and so one of the things you mentioned too is having different people who work for you. Are there any kind of like specialties that some people have, or do you break out an army division of labor based on other people's specialties and capabilities?
Yeah, so I mean that's really my role as the manager. I know what everybody's strengths and weaknesses are, and I try to force people to break through their weaknesses. I'll use one of my artists, Kaylee, for an example. She's a great artist, but she was very slow. She didn't have an airbrush.
Mm.
She wasn't really confident with using airbrush techniques, and they say that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. Well, I argue if you hold their head underwater, they're gonna drink water. So I did that to her, and eventually she's like, now she's using airbrush, and she's like, I can't believe I was not using an airbrush. It changed her game. And so that's my job, to look at people's weaknesses and go, okay, you can get better there. Certainly, I have a lot of weaknesses, but it's my job to make sure that everybody's on the same page quality wise. And if somebody's lacking in an area, I'm going to give them every tool and opportunity that I have or know of to get them where they need to be.
And so, yeah, you mentioned, an airbrush there. So someone like me who basically has a few brushes, maybe some nicer rent brushes, and a few different paints. what is the next thing that I should look into to kind of improve on painting?
Well, keep watching this on Twitch.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Zing, there's the pitch. Granted, we do a lot of BSing and hanging out because it's very natural. I mean, I got two great guys behind me. Of course, we're going to talk to each other and joke and laugh while we're on Twitch on stream. But we also do get serious, and I walk through people if they have questions, how to do certain things. But the two best resources I can give you, and it's really how I taught myself to paint, and I think a lot of things. I think a lot of artists that are more experienced would probably tell you the same thing, and it seems like it's a bullshit like vanilla answer. And pardon my language, but active duty army, I'm pretty savage. Uh, One, steal recipes off Instagram and Facebook. Okay, I do it. I have a recipe folder on my phone, and it's like elf flesh. This was the recipe a guy used, or this is the recipe that Alexi told me to use, and I just label everything in my phone. Or like I really like the way this guy did ultramarine armor, and he had just a few steps. So I'm like, okay, this is really simple. We can reproduce this very quickly, and it looks nice. I save it on my phone. Same thing for YouTube videos. There's so many people out there. Like, I don't have time right now to make YouTube videos because we're so busy painting. I don't have time to mess around with editing videos and making them perfect and spending 4 hours editing a 30-second clip. It's not something
Hmm.
I'm interested in. There's the point of diminishing returns makes it not worth it to me. But for somebody that say is not painting all day long and they're just working on one model over the course of a month, a couple hours a night, and they're taking their 2 hour videos and they're clipping them down to 10 minutes, and then they smash it all together and they put this really beautiful uh intelligent video together on YouTube on how to paint Dark Eldar Raider. And those videos are extremely useful for new artists, even intermediate artists, and I would consider myself advanced just based on my age. Uh, I still go to YouTube all the time. If I'm looking for shortcuts, I'll literally type in YouTube like how to paint Dark Eldar Raider, and then I'm like, nope, that's shit, that's shit, that's shit, that's shit. I'm like, whoa, that looks really cool, and then I'll go to the guy's video and I'll slide through and I'll go, okay, he's got his list of paints. I'm like, all right, I have all those. Let's slide through and see what else he's doing. Yeah, definitely, copy people. That's a form of flattery, right? So, monkey see, monkey do.
Yes, that's good advice. Going through learning
Yeah,
from others. Don't feel like you have to invent everything on yourself. So that's a good idea. And what
yeah.
about
Don't
so
suffer in silence.
right, right, yeah. And so let's say, someone is maybe using a lack of supplies as an excuse, or, tell me if this is valid or not. I don't have an airbrush, and sometimes my, colors over
We're done
big
here.
blocks aren't smooth. Am I wrong if I say if I only had an airbrush, my blends would be much smoother, or is that just an excuse?
That really comes down to style.
Hmm.
So, I do not do wet blends because they take a long time. It's time for me, and you hit it right on the head right at the beginning of this um, video. If you're spending tons of time on something that you could have spent a minute on with an airbrush, your alloy rate goes down. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be getting paid 25 cents an hour
Yeah.
to paint Dark Eldar Raiders when I could go to fucking McDonald's and flip burgers and pick my nose for $12 an hour, right? So you're not going to see me do a lot of wet. Maybe on a character, maybe something on the character needs wet blended, like flesh or something like that. But we know as artists like where we can. There's trade space on like we can do this fast and it's still going to look good, or we're going to have to slow down and make this look sharp. So I don't necessarily think that you have to have an airbrush, but I think you would want every tool possible at your disposal. So if it's something that you're thinking about doing, maybe watch a couple of videos. If you want to jump on Twitch and talk to me about that, I'll walk you through our entire setup. I personally feel like if you're a novice to advanced, an airbrush is an absolute must-have. Even if you're just using it for putting a base coat on, you're not
Hmm.
doing any advanced techniques, any fades or anything like that. You literally just want to make your model go from black to red, or you want to do a zenithal highlight to save you a bunch of time on shading. It's invaluable. And to a lot of people, airbrushing is like one of those things where, like, if they haven't been around anybody that does it or they have no experience with it, they're very like, oh, it's a couple $100. I got to get a compressor. That's a whole lot of moving pieces. I don't know if I want to invest in that. But this is your hobby and you love it, you need to invest in it. And an airbrush is a very worthwhile investment, and it's not that complicated. If you
Yeah,
can drive a car, you can use an airbrush.
because if we're gonna spend $1,000 on a couple armies, you probably
Yes.
earn it back all in time paid if you go faster and don't have to
Yeah.
wet blend an entire army of of troops, which is what I
Right.
unfortunately tried to do a little bit, but I'm working on it. So one of the things I wanted to talk about too, I have a few pictures of models that I pulled from your Facebook page. The one I got in front of me right now is these desert camo Space Marines, kind of in that 90s.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The First
Yeah, I
Gulf
know exactly
War.
which ones
Yeah.
you're talking about.
And so this was really interesting to me when I saw these models because generally when I think of camo, the point is to like break up the shape of the model. But these, which, for miniatures, generally you try to like accentuate the details because they're, small. But this one, I felt like I could see all the details. So can you tell me how you kind of struck that balance between, making it look like camo, but also keeping all the detail, out in the open?
One, we have to go back to I don't paint every model in the studio.
Hmm. Yeah.
Every model comes through my hands because I am the final quality control check to make sure that the product that's leaving the studio is exactly what I think the client wanted and that everything is done right. Decals to weathering to static grass on the base and stuff. So I actually did not paint that model.
Hmm.
It was painted by one of the artists, Steven, who is actually no longer at the studio. He's taking a little break so he can finish his MBA. Um, Bigger and better things, right? But for that, the client wanted a much, much, much busier desert urban camo kind of color scheme.
Hmm.
And again, this is where I got the picture. He gave me his list. I told him about pricing and how it worked. He was still super interested, and then I was like, all right, I'm like, now we're gonna have to talk about your color scheme. I was like, your color scheme is so busy on those models that no details are gonna show. Like you might as well just go get camouflage spray paint and
Yep.
spray paint them because you're not gonna see anything. And he was still a little resistant to change, and I said, look, how about we just go with this like chocolate chip desert camo look. You'll still break up the model. It'll still have that camo look. It'll look sweet, but you'll still be able to see every single detail in the model. And I'm like, I think you'll love it. And he listened to me, and the picture that you're looking at is the end result, based off of the discussions that I had with the artist, and kind of a concept in our mind of what the client wanted as an end result.
Yeah, no, and I totally like it because I have, tried to do kind of when I was painting some Space Marine, not Space Marine, Star Wars models. They had a
Hmm.
camouflage pattern on them, and I tried it, and it just looked like a I don't know, a glumpy mess. Like it almost looked
Yeah,
like there was no form to it. So yeah, I
camo
mean,
is,
this
is
is the
very difficult.
example of how to do it for anyone who's looking much more kind of toned down. Uh, it's not totally all over the place. So yeah, I really like this model.
Thanks.
The next one we have up here, this is a unit of Chaos Knights that are kind of. The armor is kind of like a bluish black, as well as
Yeah.
this really kind of high contrast gold. Like I said, I know you said you don't paint all these models, but
Yeah.
can you walk me through it all about how the like this bluish black armor is done? Because it looks great.
So I think the models, and I don't have the pictures in front of me. I don't know. I
Hmm.
think what you're describing, it's a Zinch themed kind of winter themed
Yep,
Chaos
that's
Army.
exactly it.
Those are the Vanguard Chaos Knights, where their demons are kind of like, or their steeds are like kind of demons,
Yep.
sort of. So if I remember right, I've got the recipe on my phone potentially because I actually did have to paint. So that army was painted by one of our fantastic artists in Belarus that we're partnered with, and after that army was done, the client came back and said, "Hey, I want to get 3 more of these knights." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to send this all the way to Belarus. I'm not going to waste my artist time with 3 models." So that's another part of my job is I'm an expediter in a way, so I can match every one of my artist styles as long as I have the paint recipe. uh, and usually I can reverse engineer it if for some reason I don't have it. So in this case, a lot of the work done on those Chaos Knights was actually done with inks,
Mm.
which are a lot thinner than acrylic paints. So that's where you get a lot of that buttery, smooth, kind of white and blue on the dark black armor.
Yeah, so is it just like
So
layers of blue ink or white ink on?
white ink with blue glazes over it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because when I saw it
Yeah,
initially, I
that's
was
a
like, "Is
more
this
advanced
oil paint or
technique.
something?" But yeah, that's
No, it's not oil paint.
okay.
And then the gold, I believe, is from Scale Color is the gold we used. Maybe it's Negro or Thrash Gold, I think. I can't remember the exact color. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Some of these were a
we
few
use a
years
lot
old.
of
Yeah.
different paints from different ranges. There is no one size fits all paint range. We use Vallejo, Army Painter, Scale Color, Pro Acryl, GW, Army. I mean P3 paints. We love them all. Give us
Hmm.
all the paint.
Yeah, no, I thought these models were awesome too because they
Yep.
felt a little like grim darky, in terms of like definitely some
Yeah.
weathering, some heavy, heavy contrast, but it still had that really high contrast almost all the way up from black all the way up to white. So
Yep.
I really like this color scheme. So this is definitely another one I just wanted to show off. So the next model this is the last model I wanted to kind of ask you about. It's a Warlord Titan. So you guys weren't kidding when you said you paint everything all the way up to
Yeah.
Warlord Titans. And one of the things I liked about this one is that even though there's a lot of flat surfaces and smooth surfaces on this model, you still get detail on every inch. And one of the things that caught my eye was this kind of marbling on
Yep.
like half of the Warlord Titan's sides. Do you know the process or the steps that one goes to paint that?
Yeah. So I actually did paint that one. Um, Most of the Warhound Titans and Warlords and the big super heavies, I tend to personally take on, which I don't like to necessarily do because if I get ripped down on one project, it makes it very hard for me to manage the rest of the team and uh, make corrections on deficient models that come across the table before they go to the clients.
Hmm.
But I have a particular love for the super heavies and a lot of respect for the Forge World super heavies. I guess would be the proper way to say it. Those models are extremely complex kits, extremely complex. Uh, I do not recommend that a junior novice player picks up a Warlord Titan and decides that they're going to try to put it together because it will not stay put together if they ever even get it put together, to be honest. There's a lot of pinning involved, a lot of heat treatments, a lot of two-part epoxies, liquid nails, and then you also have to take into consideration on those kind of models, weight distribution is massive important, especially if the client wants it freestanding versus mounted on like a circular base where you actually have something to support the model and keep it from tipping over. Because if you're 1 inch or 2 inches too far forward or too far back on the arm position for the weight of a weapon, it literally can cause the model to just tip. And once you put liquid nails and pins in something, usually it's not coming apart. So again, I take those pretty seriously. The painting technique that you're talking about for the marble effect is one that we use pretty common in the studio. We use it for marble bases and then also parts of armor that people want to look like marble. We actually use a baby wipe technique. There's tons of tutorials online for YouTube and Instagram or Pinterest, I mean, as far as how to exactly do it. But it all boils down to getting yourself a baby wipe, allowing that baby wipe to dry for a couple days so there's absolutely no moisture left in it, and then peeling it apart and
Oh,
stretching it until you get that veiny look with the fine threads, and then wrapping that around whatever it is that you want to put the marbling effect on, and then having your colors lined up on doing layers over it and then rotating it, doing layers, rotating it, doing layers, and then of course applying a gloss coat at the end to protect it and give it that shiny marble surface.
wow,
So it
that's
sounds
very cool.
easy. It sounds easy the way I described it, but it is an incredibly frustrating process until you get it like nailed down.
Yeah, well, and one of the other things, obviously, all of your models have distinct bases. None of them are just like some dry brushed sand. So Can you tell me about the design philosophy on how you make a base in terms of like color and shape to match the color scheme of an army?
Yeah, sure. Well, number one, we kind of have an edge because we do almost every project that comes through the studio, we do resin bases on. So those resin bases already have details way more than just sand built into the base itself, whether that be lava, snow, urban rubble, you name it. We have tons of skull fields. A lot of these bases come from like Secret Weapon Miniatures and another company called Dragon Forge. They're both very good, high quality resin bases. Recommend both of them as far as being able to pick up some. They're not cheap, but they do add a lot to your model. What you say about basing is particularly important to me because a lot of people paint really nice models and then they put the model on just the black base with like, some texture mud from GW or sand. And that really is a disservice to the model because in my mind, the base is very important. First of all, it's about 25% of the model as a whole. And second of all, it's where you can kind of tell a story. Like that, the base is where you tell the story of like where this model's been. So if you're using weathering powders on the base, that allows you to put the weathering powder like on the joints and the lower legs, and it paints this picture of this space marine like traveling through this war-torn area and dust is collecting on his pauldrons, or maybe it's a Death Guard Marine that's walking through a muddy swamp and he's got this wet mud mixture, on his feet, or whatever it may be. Uh, that's really where you tell the story of the model. And for us, like I said, we take it pretty seriously. We're a little higher end in the scale of studios. We want it to be kind of a visual spectacle for our clients when they put their army down on the table. It tells a story.
Yeah, the I think the favorite base I saw was one you posted kind of recently on your Facebook page, which was like this bluish white. It almost looked like an ocean wave crashing across a
Oh
base.
yeah.
Yeah, that one was really cool. Is that resin or epoxy?
So that is two-part resin. Um, and what that's a trial actually. That's a new technique that I'm personally working on. We're doing a deepkin army for a client, and as you know, the deepkin are kind of like the ocean faring sea elves or whatever. I personally don't like them at all, but whatever. If we're getting paid to do it, we're gonna do it right. And so the client it said he maybe wanted like some kind of water effect, and I was like, well, what do I really want to do? Like doing the water texture waves is pretty overdone. Everybody knows how to do that using water paste and stuff like that. So I really wanted to do something different that would grab people's attention. And so I have a friend in California. She does these really nice cutting boards with like wave effects on them. And so just talking to her and purchasing all the materials and paying a little R&D, I've been experimenting on how exactly to replicate what she does on a much, much, much smaller scale. And so that base that I posted on the photo that or on Facebook, that was the first attempt on a GW base.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see the army because yeah, I thought those bases were very eye catching. But is there some type of is there any heuristic in terms of coloring for the bases? Do you want the base to be contrast with your army scheme, color scheme, or do you want it to be in line, or is there no fast and simple rule for that?
So I would say 50% of the armies that come through the studio almost always select urban rubble.
Hmm.
That's a very 40k safe basing. It's going to match just about any table out there. If they're using Battlefield in the Box or the GW plastic, Necromunda kits or whatever, it ties in, kind of paints a picture they're in this war torn city. That's really easy to do. The rest of the bases, I always personally try to make sure that our bases contrast the model. What you don't want to do is have, unless it's something like a sniper or something like that, that uh, you want to look like it's blending into the base to tell the story,
Hmm.
then I prefer a base that contrasts because I don't like it when you can't tell where the model stops and the base starts. Uh, it doesn't look so great on the tabletop. So having high contrast is good. But
Okay.
again, that's personal preference. Some people may prefer, the base blending into the model.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. I'm currently, going through my own process of kind of planning out painting of my army and basing schemes. So all that is very useful for me. So then we'll move on to the
Yeah.
last couple of questions and kind of wrapping it up. So you guys are called, Stiff Neck Studios, and I've sat down for a few long painting sessions, and I think I know why you call it that, or even like low
Yeah.
back pain. So you guys are obviously
Low back
painting.
pain studio.
Yeah, and that would be me.
Yeah.
I would be there. But you guys are obviously painting even longer. Like I start to feel sore after 2 hours. So what is the secret to be painting full time and not being, carted around in a wheelchair?
Well, it's really different for everybody. I can only tell you what works for me. What works for me is I'm very regimented because I'm military. I get up every morning, I go work out, I go for a run, and that really stretches me out, prepares me for the day. And I take a lot of breaks. So, I usually don't paint for more than 2 or 3 hours at a time before I get up and go walk around, kind of stretch out, shake the shoulders out, shake the hands out. Because yeah, you're right. You definitely will feel it in your lower back and your neck, and uh, if you're in pain, you're not going to be doing your best work. That's for sure, and you're probably not going to be motivated to complete whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, one
Uh,
thing I see too, just looking at your kind of studio setup, is you guys seem to have like relatively higher, higher tables maybe, and a lot more lights than I have. So I mean, maybe that's something I'm doing too, where I've got too low of a table, I'm leaning over, and I got one light, so I got to keep craning my neck.
yeah. So good posture for sure, setting up straight and just being cognizant of that the best that you can. Yeah, they're both like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
You can't help it though. So they're both working on detail stuff right now. You can't help but get sucked in and really be looking at that piece and noticing that you're hunched over. There's really no way to avoid that. But certainly having a little bit higher table and allowing your seat to lower and getting you closer to the workspace. You don't want to be way high above your workspace because then that's going to cause that hunching over problem you talked about. I try to be level with my workspace, and then when you have your hands up here, it's no more than a foot from your face or so.
Yeah.
Um, and then lighting is super important as well. I mean, you can see these two lights here, but these aren't really anything. I have like huge shop lights right above me, even more than what Kalen has. I've got about double the light that he has above my workspace because you don't want to have shadow. If you're straining your eyes and it's not bright enough, that it's going to give you a tension headache. You can't see what you're doing. What you think looks good in this dark room when you go to the hobby store that's really well lit, people are going to be like, "Oh man, that doesn't look so good." You're like, "Damn it!"
Yeah, so maybe I got to
So
go, improve on my $10 desk lamp for my
yeah, oh yeah,
page
you
setup.
definitely. I recommend Ott lamps. They're very very good. But if you look again, Instagram and YouTube of your friends, I mean, people are doing like these LED archways
Yep,
now.
that's
They're
what
super cheap.
Tarzan had.
Yeah, I mean, you can do anything. I mean, there's a million different reasons why you should have good lighting in your painting area.
Question I had for you is, so someone who's kind of getting into Warhammer 40k, or at least more of a who's been in it for a little while, but wants to really get to that next level, trying winning best painted at a competition or something like that. What type of advice do you have for them?
Well, one, avoid coming up against stiff neck studio artists.
That's fair. Yeah. Go to small fry events. There, you heard it
Yeah,
here.
exactly. So, best advice I can give you: start small. Okay, uh, don't don't go for some big massive army as a new painter and go, I'm gonna make this golden demon. I'm gonna win painting trophies with this and everything else. Get yourself one army that's painted well, battle ready, whatever you want to call it, and then maybe pick a couple characters inside your army and really lavish fine detail upon them. Do your wet blending, do your hard edge highlighting, do your object source lighting, do all these things that you see all these fantastic amazing artists throw out on Instagram and YouTube, and just apply that to one model. And then when you get to the tournament or whatever, depending on the size of the tournament, they usually will have like your single model entry, and then intro that, and then get feedback from the judge and see what they're looking for. And they're like, oh well, I legit lost a painting competition once, and I'm not kidding, over a floating foot. and this was a crystal brush. This is a very prestigious painting competition, and I don't do painting competitions very often, but it was a challenge that I accepted from another artist, and I would have got first. I would have got first place in, I can't remember the category, had I not had the tip. I mean, like, if this is the rock, I had the
Mm-hmm.
tip of the foot hanging off the rock just a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it was so minuscule, but it's little things like that. If you're really going for a tournament piece or a competition piece, you have to keep in mind. And then you can start working your way up to, like, okay, how can I do this effect on a full-sized army quickly? Because I mean, that's the thing. You don't want to be working on one army for 3 years.
Right.
Maybe you do. I don't. I don't know most people do. I would like to get the army done before GW comes out with a new FAQ and fuck.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I decide I don't want to play Dark Elder anymore because my Raiders cost more, and now I want to play High El or Eldar.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to keep that in mind. Like, what can I do that looks great fast? And that maybe that's not going to win you best painted army. Um, because if you're going for best painted army, you could very well be going against that guy that's been painting on his army for 3 years, and
Right.
he's literally won tons of painting competitions with the same army over and over, just going to different events. And then you get the feel bads because you're like, oh, I'm never going to beat that guy, and you don't realize he's been done painting his army, and he's just being a dick and bringing his beautiful painted army to multiple events. And I see that all the time, and I'm like, if I'm a judge, I'm gonna be like, yeah, tough, bro. You're disqualified. You can't win best painted because you won it last year at the town over
Mm-hmm.
at the RT. Tough. But that's me. I like to force people to paint new things and accept challenges.
Yeah, so it sounds
So
like there was a few pieces of advice there. One is, don't necessarily be comparing yourself to people who've been in the hobby for 15 years. Start
yeah,
small, but go through YouTube, Instagram, sources like that, other artists for critiques. Start small on one model, slowly build it out, until you either get a full army or improve the army over time. As GW FAQs one model, you yoink an old model out, put a new model in that you paint really well, and you kind of
yep.
slowly build up to it, and then take it around for several years, and hopefully just keep slamming
And win as
competitions.
much as you can. Yeah. Because I mean, you're going to run up against guys like Tarzan. I mean, and I'm only using Tarzan as an example because he's got a beautifully painted army.
Mhm.
But David only has one army now. He has his orcs,
He did
and
win
he's been
best
painted.
painted last week at a
Yeah.
major. Yeah.
Well, and I'm telling you, this is a word of caution
Hmm.
for new artists because David's army is beautiful, hands down. But he's been painting on that army for years now, and he's had it for years. And so it's an unfair advantage to somebody like you that's coming in new, like, to compare yourself to somebody like that because you don't know that he's been using that army for years, and that's why it's so beautiful. And he's mastered the technique on these orcs because that's all he's painted.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. I really want to grow the hobby, and one problem I have with the hobby in America, it's not a problem overseas. Uh, it's in America, everybody is hyper focused on the competition and winning because we're fucking Americans and we like to win. And there's very in the artistic and the hobby aspect is like, here's 10 points.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
like people, it's not really a thing in America. Whereas if you go overseas, it's a very big part of the hobby. And the winning aspect is like, oh, that's nice. But a lot of them really focused on the hobby more. It's just a flipping culture. I would love to see that be more important in America. I just don't see it because we are very hyper focused on winning.
Okay. Yeah. No. This was all awesome. So before we kind of ended here, I wanted to have you kind of plug your studio. Where can people find you? Where can people watch you?
See, plug, here we go. First of all, you can go into that old Google machine and just type in Stiff Neck Studio, and you're going to find tons of photos, and they'll probably all link back to us on Facebook. We're Stiff Neck Studio there, and if you go into our galleries, you can see tons and tons of everything that we've painted, and it's all broken down by faction. So if you don't care about Dark Elder, you can just scroll down and go to Chaos Space Marines or whatever it is. So you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. We've got a very deep gallery in there. We're coming up on 14,000 followers on Instagram, which I'm pretty proud of because we're not showing girls in bikinis; we're showing little miniatures. So that's pretty impressive. And you can find us on Twitch as well. And we just started posting some stuff on Reddit here and there.
Of course, I'll put all of these links in the description below, so anyone will just be able to
Okay,
open that
yeah.
out and just click on those and go right to it. So thank you so much. This was an awesome interview, and you helped me kind of get through a lot of techniques and color schemes just by looking at your models. So I really appreciated having you on and getting a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, right back at you, man. And hopefully jump on the Twitch. We're not really strict on our schedule because sometimes, we just don't want to be bothered.
Hmm.
So we're in here, we're grinding, we're painting, and we don't want to like, answer questions and be distracted. But then sometimes we do just flip on the camera and we go live on Twitch and we're like, it's a free for all. So if you see that notification come up, jump on. And if you have a burning question, just jump on there and ask us.